The Retirement Cafe podcast, episode 50, how to plan with intention and retire with purpose with the Retirement Answer Man.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is brought to you by the retirement planning specialists, MFP Wealth Management. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Roger Whitney, who is known as the Retirement Answer Man. He's a certified financial planner with more than 25 years experience. Roger is the author of Rock Retirement, a simple guide to help you take control and be more optimistic about the future, and host of the Retirement Answer Man Show podcast. He believes that planning for retirement is just as much about intentional saving as it is about intentional living. He joins me at the Birmingham Hilton Metropole Hotel, where I'm at for a couple of days at the Financial Planning Conference, which is run by CZ, which is one of my professional bodies, the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments. So thank you for joining me and welcome to the podcast, Roger.
I am excited to be here. I'm excited to be at CISI. Is that where we're at?
That's
today?
where we're at. Yeah, we are at with the CISI conference.
Enjoying all this rainy weather that the UK has to offer.
So whereabouts are you from, Roger?
And actually, this is a beautiful. My wife and I are very happy because we're from Texas.
Yeah.
And it's still in Fahrenheit 90 degrees. So
Wow. Okay, that's hot.
Yeah. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's hot.
Yeah, that's hot.
So this has been a great respite from all that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you've obviously come to the conference to talk and to educate some UK advisors about how it's done in Texas.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think it went well.
Yeah.
They didn't throw me out yet.
No, I think it went really well. So what have you managed to see in your trip over here? Have you had some travels around?
Yeah, we came a week early and we spent time in London. We hadn't been to London in 20 years.
Wow.
And so we were kidless and we saw pretty much, actually the highlight was we got to tour Parliament.
Okay.
Which we weren't planning on doing.
Right.
And we were standing there, my wife and I, and there was a gentleman who worked in Parliament doing something. He was sort of guardian, I guess.
Yeah.
And this lady and these two gentlemen walked by really quickly, and he nudges me and goes, "That was the black rod. You don't see that very often." And I said, of course, "What the heck is the black rod?" And so he went into the story and actually worked out where he gave so much color to what goes on in Parliament that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Great.
So I've seen the black rod.
Fantastic.
And
More than I have.
She seems like a nice lady.
So you're the Retirement Answer Man. So tell me about that.
That's sort of a scary thing to say. I remember when we named the podcast that, it's a little intimidating, right? Who am I to name a podcast that? And I finally came to, it's an aspiration, right? It's something you have to try to live into. And the whole point of naming a podcast for me anyway was making sure that people that were looking for a certain kind of message could find what we were doing. So
Yeah.
that was really the logic of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're a certified financial planner, a CFP, like myself. It's not quite as well known in the UK, CFP designation, but I know it's well known in the US.
Yeah, I got my CFP in 2002. It's hard when you get older to remember that. And it is the benchmark, I think, for someone that takes their craft as a craft, as something where they are working at building competence, not just in one area, but being more holistic. And I'm still surprised in the U.S., I forget what the percentage is, of the percentage of advisors that don't have it. It's still pretty large.
Yeah.
Because it takes work.
It is, and it's large in the UK. There's a lot of chartered financial planners, which I'm one of them. Of course, CFP being chartered financial planner as well, but very few are chartered and certified, the CFP designation.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't mean that you're automatically an expert. I don't think anything does. I know a lot of PhDs that probably aren't very smart, but it does show intentionality in honing your craft, and I think that's important. right? And
So,
anything we
yeah, absolutely. So, the podcast has been it's been well received, hasn't it, in the US? I mean, you've got clients from it from all over the country.
I would say the podcast has changed my life.
Wow.
In all good ways. On a personal level, we work with clients all over the country in 23 different states, and all of our meetings are virtual. I think this is actually this whole, whether it's podcasting or blogging and these social things that are on the internet, I think it really puts a lot of power into the consumer's hands. Because if you think about it, when you're looking for an advisor, say, typically, the typical thing is who your friends use, and they like him, and are your friends even qualified to know what is competent or not and what is a right fit or not? And then interviewing advisors, traditionally it was done in a geographical area. Well, your talent pool is only so large. And by being able to, as a consumer, listen and consume hopefully very valuable content over days, months, years, you get to learn the spirit of someone and actually connect with them that you would never have met otherwise. I think it puts a lot more power into consumers to find people that match where they're at in life and the spirit in which they want to approach things. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And, your presentation today I thought was very interesting about how the knowledge used to be the preserve of the advisor. You used to know all the technical knowledge. Now we know, and you pointed out that, a good Google search gives people the knowledge. Asset allocation, i.e. how people invest their retirement savings, used to be the preserve of the advisor again, because they were clever. They knew it, they'd studied it. But again, that's been democratized. That's available on the internet. There are low-cost savings products in the US as well as, we've got Vanguard, who are one of the fund houses I use in my portfolios, have brought down the cost of investing, and consumers can go direct to them. So then the financial planning software, you also pointed that out. That's becoming more and more available on websites, etc. People can use Excel well. But you're still really busy. Well, so am I. But you're still really busy. So why is it, with all that information out there that is available now to people, that people still need to come and seek a professional like yourself?
Well, I think it's a couple of reasons. One, I don't think everybody does. I think most people from an intelligence standpoint are more than capable with all the tools and the knowledge that are out there to DIY it or do it themselves if they want to walk that journey. I think what you miss is assuming you're working with someone that has wisdom and perspective. Well, let me explain it this way. So when my family and I went to Costa Rica, we went to one of their national parks, and we hired a guide to walk us through the park. We could have easily walked through the park and saw things and done stuff, but by having the guide, he pointed out opportunities to view wildlife that we never would have saw.
Sure.
And he pointed out areas that we should explore and also areas that we shouldn't. And the reason is because it was our first journey through that park. He had walked that path and those paths for years. And so he knew where the trouble spots were, where the opportunities were, where the blind spots are, where you really have to go through something ugly to get to something amazing, because he had walked that journey so many times before. And when I think of retirement, which is what you and I talk about all the time, I think that's where the value is with an advisor is all I do and all you do is help people transition into living in a very different way of life.
Yeah.
And over time, God willing, if we're awake, we build up a collective library of knowledge, but wisdom of where the opportunities are, where the risks are. And that cumulative wealth you can't replace through a Google search.
No.
And I think from the client perspective, they get one shot of creating a great life. And just like I'll use the maybe worn out analogy of you don't want to go to a generalist to do heart surgery. You want to do the person where you're the 10,000 heart surgeries that they've done, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they've had things go wrong. And I think specialization like that is going to be where value is for the advisor in building a business, and where clients need to look more to, because otherwise there's so much they could just do themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about Rock Retirement. Tell me about your new book.
So the book, Rock Retirement, I was looking at writing a book because I'd had the podcast, and so I bought every retirement book I could find.
Right.
And I'm a fairly nerdy guy, and they all were extremely boring because they're all very technical, tactical. And so I wrote a book about, I think, that challenges our preconceptions about retirement and to help us think a little bit more multidimensionally about not retirement as it's defined, but creating a great life. Because I think most retirement planning, the way that the CFP teaches it, it's evolving, but it a lot of times ends up being this very bloated process that doesn't engage people. It makes them go to sleep, but it also ends up focusing so much on the money that all it does is give them options to sacrifice their life. And I think most of us, we want to have a great life when we're 80, but we don't want to miss our life now. And there's a natural tension between those two things. And so the book talks about that tension and how to think a little bit more multidimensionally so to find that balance so you don't miss the only life you have.
So what are your tips to find that balance then?
First off is, one, realize you can't figure it out. One, you can't figure it out. Two, financial planners, the finance industry doesn't know how to do it because we're living a modern retirement age that has never been done before.
Yeah.
People are generally retiring a little bit younger, but not just that, they're healthier, they're more active than any other generation in the history of man. They're not retiring to go sit on the park bench of life. They want to do things, and they're going to live longer than any other generation. And in the U.S. anyway, most are not going to have the traditional pension.
No.
They're going to have responsibility for their own assets. And this is a new dynamic that's never been dealt with before. So don't trust anybody that thinks they have it figured out. And so if you can't figure it all out, then it's have lots of little conversations about the right things. And it's going to be a lot more about iterating than thinking there's some grand plan and it's just going to be okay. And that's scary. But then once you really accept it, now you can get down to the business of what should I do next? And that's really where it's at.
So when you have a new client approach you and they're maybe just approaching retirement and they've got a number of assets and they're exiting the stage of work, tell me, how does your planning process work? What would a client experience as they come through the retirement answer man's kind of advice process? I'm asking for a friend, of course.
Yes. The first step is always trying to get them to think bigger about what their life should be. So I think because of how financial planning is typically framed, people feel like they'll be lucky if they just survive financially and don't run out of money.
Yeah.
That's the attitude people come in to just because of the normal press and the retirement crisis. And in some cases that may be true. But what I tell people to do is, I want to goal set, or let's dream up what the ideal life would be. So that's base needs, what your wishes would be, and what those aspirational things would be. So the first step for me is always, if you could have everything, let's not look at your resources. What would be an amazing life for you? And it's hard for people to do that. Because usually the people that are best positioned to explore those questions are the ones that have the hardest time because they were such good savers.
Yeah.
They don't know how to reap. So I always try to spend a lot of time of really helping them think creatively about what if they could have everything. And I tell them, if we do this right, this will be impossible. And then they're like, well, what's the point? And it's like, well, then we got it all on the table. And so if it's not possible, now we can start to prioritize, because the whole goal here is, how do we actively take little actions to get the most out of life and whatever that means to us that we can.
Yeah.
So usually it's trying to get them to think a little bit more expansively.
So we've created a bit of a wonderful vision of the future. Then you've helped prioritize the things within that. And then what's next?
Well, then we look at, okay, well, how are we going to pay for this? Right? And so there are a couple there's three sources of capital that people can use to pay for things. Number one is social capital, which we borrow from social sciences. In the US, that would be Social Security or pension of some sort. That's a socialized kind of benefit. And that's an important one. And then there's human capital, which is our most powerful capital, which is our ability to earn money. And this is one thing I think with retirement that a lot of people, they usually nod their heads, but they don't think about it is, we think of retirement and work as a binary decision. You're either working or you're retired. And it's more like a dimmer switch. There's lots of in-betweens, because at least with my audience, when they talk to me and we ask, they don't want to retire. They just want more control over their time. And so we explore that to see if that's an option of human capital, because working and having time freedom, there's a lot of in between that's really powerful to solve this puzzle.
Yeah.
And then the third source of capital is your financial assets, right? The money you have. And then so we count those, and then we see, given the resources you have, if your life that you dreamed up is possible. And then assuming it's not, it becomes a negotiation after that. And you are helping the client negotiate to make sure that they are getting the things that they care about most. And that's where a lot of the individual decisions come in.
Yeah. So have you got any examples of, Roger, of real clients that you've worked with who have kind of put something out on the table which to them sounded kind of, unbelievable, and that you've actually, when you've sat down and done the work, that you found that you can, achieve a lot of those things?
More than you would think. I mean, the people that listen to the show end up being the ones that have saved, they're listening to a retirement show. They're obviously engaged in thinking about this, which is unfortunate in some instances, right? Because the people that need the message most don't listen.
Sure.
That's why they need the message most. But I think there is a little, at least in my very small world, it happens more than I expect. And I think it's because the people that are best at sowing and saving and investing and controlling spending and getting value from life, not as much from things, but family and experiences. The people that are the best at that usually have the excess capital when they retire, and now they're great farmers, but they don't know how to bring in a harvest.
No.
They don't know how to reap. And my role is a lot of, with those type of situations, is try to help them basically give themselves permission that you can help them, because the other part is too, right, and I'm sure you experienced this, is there's that, we call it a Protestant work, the work ethic in the States,
Yep.
and they like denying themselves. They have the badge of courage, and buying a first class ticket is insane to some people, right? But you have to, but the journey is helping them see, look, this money is going to have a place. It's either going to be a big check at the end, or we're going to have to think creatively and reasonably to how to use this to create experiences, to do things to serve you and your family. And I'm Christian, so I talk, otherwise you're just burying it in the ground.
Yeah.
And it's going to go to someone in a check from an attorney when you pass. It's an asset. By default, that's the option. How can you give yourself permission? I've had clients where I've literally sat across the table, and the husband knew this was happening, and telling him, you guys need to go on that trip, because I know you guys want to go on that trip, and you can't get yourself to do it. And the wife had to be there so she could shame him to, okay, we'll go on that trip.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences, and I've actually had postcards going back saying, well, you said we could afford it.
Can I tell one story
Yeah,
about this?
yes, please.
And this is actually not a client, but from our club. So I have these office hours, and I was speaking with this lady, and she was a retired pediatrician. And I'll make it short, but the conversation basically went, it's clear you have more money than you'll ever need. She's not wealthy, but she's not hurting. And then she starts telling me about how she plans on going to Europe in the next 5 or 6 years. Natural goal, travel for us here, coming to Europe. Then she proceeds to tell me, and it was in this sequence, oh yeah, my mom's blind. She passed away recently. There's a genetic thing they say can pop up anytime, with my sister and I. And oh, by the way, my sister, who's younger than I, just got diagnosed, and she's already losing her eyesight, and she'll probably be legally blind in the next 3 to 4 months. And I could potentially have this gene too.
Wow.
have enough money, always wanted to go to Europe, so I'm going to do it in 5 or 6 years. We got this genetic thing that can pop up anytime and make me blind, and my younger sister is on that path right now. And to you, I'm guessing to you, it's obvious. Why the heck are you not going to Europe next month?
Mm.
And that's basically what I said to her. And it was the most obvious thing in the world from the outside, but from the inside, she could not connect those dots. And so what happened was, because she was shy, I shared this story anonymously in the club for her. And then with the call to action of where should she go? What should she do? A lot of people in the club had been to Europe. And we ended up having this whole thread of go here, these are people that I used. And this was probably in like January, February, and she went in April.
Right.
And she sent me photos from the UK, actually.
Wow.
With just tears. But I think that's the whole point of everything we do.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So tell me more about the club.
It's called the Rock Retirement Club, and it's meant for people that prefer not to work directly with an advisor or are just looking to get education, empowerment, and inspiration from me in the education part, but also because I help teach and frame connecting the dots of all the things we have to do and try to empower people to take action on their own. And what's been really interesting, we have about 260 people in it, is it's hard to talk about these things with your neighbor or your brother or brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the benefit is you're seeing people that are exactly like me that are 2 or 3 years ahead of me or behind me. And we see that in this conference with planners, right? We're sharing stories and helping each other. So that's what the club is.
Great.
Yeah. It's been an interesting experiment that's turning into something sort of cool.
Sure. So what's the future for Roger, the retirement answer man?
Got another book coming.
Wow.
Focusing on building the club, and I'm helping change how people think about retirement so they can have more of their life.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So where can people find more about you and your book?
RogerWhitney.com is where everything is housed, and
Okay.
the podcast is Retirement Answer Man.
Great.
And we have a blast. If you can understand our English, our American accent.
And I'm sure Amazon.co.uk still stocks your book as well.
I believe so, yeah.
All right. Well, so we'll put all the information on the show notes, etc., where you can find out more about Roger. Thank you so much for spending some time with me and having a chat. We've got very similar businesses and very similar passions, so it's been great to get to know you.
Yeah, it's been me too. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Roger.
If you'd like to find out more about Roger's podcast, book, and the great work he's doing, check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll also find the useful links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do leave a review on iTunes or any of your preferred podcast players to help more people like you discover us. It really does help. And if you've not yet subscribed, then you can do so on our website, theretirementcafe.co.uk, or on your preferred podcast player. Next week, I chat with Professor Samur Gray, the renowned consultant in public health, knighted for his services to the NHS. He will be speaking about his mission to help us age well by providing a clear knowledge, and about his books, including Sod 70, The Guide to Living Well. Samur really is an affable character, so it's a must-listen episode. So until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.